There's an idea here that what we're doing is we're going vinyasa style, okay, from Paschimottanasana into Savasana, okay. So the release is clean, and actually I'll explain why I got the idea that we needed to emphasize it. There's a principle called PNF reflex. If you've studied personal training or athletic training, athletic performance, then you would have heard of PNF reflex, okay? Originally developed as a concept by the Russian Olympic team in the late 1960s and early 1970s. The U.S., under the American College of Orthopedic Medicine, which then spun off with the American College of Sports Medical Physicians, really got into it. And one of the things that they found out was it was about high performance stretching, high performance range of motion, right? Because we're talking Olympic athletes here. How do we make Olympic athletes more Olympic? Okay? And so one of the things that they found out is that when you do a strong range of motion or a stretch, and you put the tendons and connective tissue under pressure, okay? When you release that stretch, the tissue does not actually release. In other words, when you take the pressure off of the stretch, the tendons and connective tissue that have been hypermobilized or stretched do not actually release or relax. In fact, they go exactly the opposite. They go immediately into contraction. Okay, they go immediately into contraction, and then for 10 or 12 seconds, they go contract, release, contract, release, contract, release, and each time there's a little more release and a little less contraction until after about 12 seconds or so, it stabilizes. When you do a hard stretch and then you go to a relaxed position and you feel that little just for a second and then ease into the floor, that's what you're feeling. That's what you're experiencing. Okay, that's called the PNF reflex, proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation reflex. Okay, now when I take her out of a extreme forward bend, when I come up here, if I stop here for just a minute, all right, she goes into a spasm reflex right now. It's happening right now. Then when I go to take her back, guess what? I actually should treat that as a completely different stretch in motion. Because if I do it in less than 15 seconds, in other words, if I come up here, right, and I don't wait until that spasm completely passes, all right, then I'm actually working against it coming back here, okay? So to work with the timing, it's a timing thing. In other words, when we're in the forward bend, and I project, see there's my projection, and then here's the extension. One breath down, she takes another breath, second breath down, a little more. Go ahead and reach your hands out so we can see what you're doing there. And then as she takes her third breath, go right here and one motion, up and back, pause, and then down. So there's no tentative lift, halfway stop, because some people, that PNF reflex is so strong that wherever you stop on the release, they'll freeze there. They'll literally get stuck there. Now, if you work with a lot of range of motion, you do a lot of classes, you're going to see people get stuck coming out of a stretch. You'll see them, they look good in the stretch, but it's like when they go to come out, they start the motion, and if there's a little hesitation, all of a sudden it's like, whoa, I'm stuck. Something seizes, something locks. You may have experienced it yourself. It's like a tightening that comes in just a second or two, a few seconds after you release the posture. See? You don't feel it when you're in it. When you overstretch, you get a compensatory reflex, tightening and compression. That's also a PNF reflex. And that is a splinting mechanism. In other words, you overstretch me, I go into the reflex. Why? To stop you. That's the whole point. To stop, right? But the problem is that's a natural reflex we have it whenever we do any stretch. If I go like this, I get it. But see, that motion took less than 12 seconds. You see? If I held this at extension, okay, and then slowly came out of that extension, I would feel the compression. Okay? I'd feel that reflex tightening. Okay? All right, anyway, so some of the ways that back spasm manifests is if you stop and then start to take someone, if you stop in the middle, wait at least 10 or 12 seconds before you go to the next part. See, that's another thing I'm saying. If you are going to stop, well then go ahead and make it a rest stop. Wait till the spasm passes. That reflex passes, 12 to 15 seconds. And then go on, and you'll have less resistance. But don't come up halfway, stop, change your position, and then go. It's either go all the way in one motion, or stop halfway and wait for at least 10 seconds before you go on to the next, right? Because if you don't do that, what will happen sometimes, okay? Not all the time, okay? But sometimes, person will have a spasm in their low back, which will be strong enough to impinge the disc or impinge a nerve, and they'll get a sharp pain in their low back, right? And it will lock, and it'll stay there as you bring them on down. So even if once you get them down to the mat, you'll notice that your clue that this is happening, of course, is the ugly look on their face of pain, and the fact that as you roll them back, they bring their knees up. So anytime you take someone out of the forward bend, you notice as they come out of the forward bend, their inclination is to make a face and bring their knees up as they're coming out. Well, it's because right then they're experiencing spasm in their low back. You trigger spasm for the PNF reflex. If you are in constant motion doing extreme posture to extreme posture, sometimes you're gonna get into that compensatory reflex, and something is going to seize. You will pinch a nerve, and it will shut you down like you're hit with a baseball bat. Okay? Most of the time you feel it as just a twinge. Something pulls up, and you're like, whoa, what was that? Well, that I'm telling you what that was. Okay? Now, why do I want to know this? Well, I don't want to injure my clients. I don't want them to come out of the session with a horrible spasm that they didn't have going into it. Nothing, it's just me. I'm like that.
Hopefully all of us.
Yeah. You haven't done your work if they leave in worse condition.
Or if they have to be wheeled out. Or if they have to be wheeled out.
Is there a possible adaptation to that one extreme movement to the next, like you see a lot of acrobats maybe doing?
Well, you can train for it.
Yeah.
Okay? But here's the difference. If, for example, if I'm doing acrobatics, or I'm doing gymnastics, or I'm doing martial arts, or something like that, okay? The reflex, me handling the reflex is built in because I'm in control of the motion, okay? And so I have guiding principles that come online as far as neuromuscular mapping that takes precedence when I engage the motion. When you engage the motion, those proprioceptive markers are not there. And the way it works, here's a metaphor for you. It's like if I was going into a cave. I'd never been in a cave before, okay? And I'm kind of a prudent person, so I'm not ignorant about going into a cave thinking that I'm just going to be the first person to never get lost in a cave, okay? So I'll leave a trail of breadcrumbs. Okay, that's not good because the bugs are going to pick them up as I go. So maybe I'll take some string, and I lead the string along behind me as I go into the cave. Okay, what is that string as I go further and further in the cave? Well, it is neuromuscular facilitation. It's actually chemical memory. Okay, so in other words, the string is actually a memory device. It's a mnemonic device. Okay. Now, to get it back out of the cave, as long as I've been unwinding my string, no matter how complex the cave is, to get out, all I have to do is follow the string out. All right? It's the way our brain works when you do a physical activity. For example, you have a closed-in head trauma. fall off your motorcycle and you're not wearing a helmet like a smart guy, and you get some trauma and you have to learn how to eat again because you have an eating disorder, okay? And they teach you how to get that spoon back to your mouth with repetition. What happens is every time you move that hand to the mouth, it leaves down a trail of chemical markers in the brain. So that the next time you go to move that hand to the mouth, you follow those markers, which eventually become the tracks that neuropeptides, that's what the markers actually are, neuropeptides, and eventually neurons develop along those, following those trails of breadcrumbs. And then that becomes new neural development. We call that neuromuscular re-education, okay? Now, when I'm moving you, okay, that's the string is not there. It's more like the breadcrumbs. Some are there, some get lost. Some are there, some get lost. When you're moving you and you're doing a really expressive dance or gymnastics or whatever, you're laying down hard breadcrumbs. You don't just have a string laying out behind you. You're laying out cables, fiber optic cables of information that in real time that tell you how to get out of the predicament that you put yourself into. Okay?
Yeah.
So on a neuromuscular way, you know how you got there, you know how to get out. And when that is done really well, we call that performance, and it's fun to watch. Right? It's fun to watch. Now, when I'm doing it to you, okay, there is some of that. In other words, you could be damaged. Your brain could be damaged, and you could not know how to get that spoon back to your mouth. And literally, I could pick your hand up and shove it in your mouth, and you could eventually learn how to get it there by just me doing it. Eventually, you'd be able to do it. But guess what? It would take a really long time. Okay? Take a really long time. So there is a difference between self-initiated movement and like postures, like we do yoga flows and vinyasa that we initiate. There is a difference. Now, there's a trade-off. My trade-off is, in Thai yoga, I'm not getting the neuromuscular mapping that I would get if you were doing all these postures yourself. So actually I'm losing something. See, that's a con. That's a trade-off, right? But here's the pro. The pro is when you do self-initiate the motions, you also have antagonistic muscle reflex. In other words, you're fighting your own inner resistance to motion. And you may win or you may lose. When I'm moving you through postures, I'm doing it with far less resistance, far less antagonism. And that's why I get more range of motion. When you do range of motion on your own, it's because of muscular strength and ballistic motion, or throwing your body weight and or pulling or straining, okay? When I move you through the same posture, that's not there. It's not ballistic, and it's not a strain posture for you. You're fighting the resistance to the motion. You're not fighting to pull into the motion. It's completely 180 degrees different set of musculature. Okay? And the beauty part is when I take you into a forward bend and I do this and you're relaxed, okay, I'm actually showing you what your forward bend looks like if you had none of that antagonism, or if you had less of it anyway, because none will take a little bit. But certainly I can show you how you would move if you had less antagonism. And that's internal resistance to your own body's motion. Okay? So PNF reflex says that when we take someone out of a stretch, that we take them out cleanly and don't stop halfway along the way to see if it's okay. Okay? Go slow, but be clean and come completely out. And that's why it doesn't matter. Spinal rotation, same rule. You take someone into a spinal rotation, don't leave them there and let them get out on their own. Why? They don't know how they got in there. Neuromuscular wise, they don't know how they got in there. So they're likely to pinch a nerve trying to get out. Okay, which means essentially take a wrong turn, right? So just like I bring you out of the forward bend, I bring you out of the spinal rotation. I don't take you out incrementally. I put you in, I take you out. I put you in, I take you out. Not fast, but I don't hesitate.